This photo was taken at approximately 8:30 a.m. on September 11, 2001, by David Monderer from the Manhattan Bridge pedestrian walkway. Roughly 16 minutes later, a plane would crash into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, hitting floors 93 to 99. In 1991, Vasile Gorgos, a 63-year-old cattle seller from rural Romania, told his family that he was heading on a business trip. He often went on business trips to various cities in Romania to sell his cattle, so this wasn't unusual. He left and told his family he'd be back in a couple of days, but the reality was that this was the last time his family saw him for 3 decades. The family reported his disappearance to police, but nothing ever came out of it. His family eventually assumed he had fallen victim to foul play or suffered a tragic accident. But 30 years later, in August 2021, a car stopped in front of the Gorgos' family house and dropped off Vasile, who was now aged 93. Vasile looked to be in a clean and tidy condition, meaning wherever he had been for the last 30 years he was well taken care of. When asked by reporters and family where he was all these years, he replied candidly, "I was home." A wildlife photographer named Mark Leda was bitten by a black mamba and captured the bite on camera. The only reason he survived the attack by the black mamba was because it was a dry bite with no venom injected. On December 26, 2004, Southeast Asia was struck by a tsunami that killed around 230,000 people. This photo of Deborah Garlick was discovered from the last roll of film she took before she tragically lost her life to the tsunami. In 1957, a 42,000-pound hydrogen bomb, one of the most powerful of its time, was accidentally dropped by a bomber near Albuquerque, New Mexico. Luckily, it landed in an uninhabited area, so no one was injured or killed. This photo shows Muhammad Ali helping to talk a suicidal man off the 9th floor of a high-rise structure in Los Angeles in 1981. By the Los Angeles Times' account, Ali leaned out and shouted to the man, known as Joe, "You're my brother, I love you, and I couldn't lie to you." Soon, he made his way to the fire escape, put an arm around Joe, and guided him inside. The two walked out of the building together, got in Ali's car, and drove, after a stop at a police station, to a nearby hospital. This is Meredith Hunter moments before he was stabbed to death by a Hells Angel gang member who was providing security for the Rolling Stones at the Altamont Free concert in 1969. During the performance by the Rolling Stones, Hunter approached the stage and was violently driven off by members of the Hells Angels motorcycle club who had agreed to prevent members of the audience from mounting the stage. He subsequently returned to the stage area, drew a revolver, and was stabbed and beaten to death by Hells Angel Alan Pissarro. In 2017, a bald man in Mozambique was decapitated because the men who killed him believed he had gold in his head. The police think the notion of a bald head containing gold is a ruse by witch doctors to get clients to take a person's head to them. Ramon Artagavetia survived the fire and sinking of a ship in 1871, leaving him emotionally scarred. 41 years later, he was finally able to overcome his fears and decided to sail again. Unfortunately, the ship he chose to sail on was the Titanic. He was one of the 1,517 people that perished. Body cam image of Brent Thompson after he was stopped by cops on the I-25 in Colorado. He gave the cops a fake name and then attempted to flee. The cop tased him, causing him to collapse. Moments later, an SUV struck him as he lay prone. He was taken to a hospital but was pronounced dead. Catherine Knight was the first Australian woman to be given life imprisonment without parole. She stabbed her husband, John Price, to death and then skinned him. Soon after, she decapitated him and cooked random parts of his body with the intention of feeding them to Price's unsuspecting kids. She even set the table and had place cards to tell the children where to sit. In 1984, Tommy Cooper, a British comedian, died of a heart attack while performing during a live TV broadcast at Her Majesty's Theatre in London. Initially, the audience, thinking it was part of the act, continued to laugh as he lay collapsed on the stage. He was then pulled from sight as attempts were made to revive him off stage. On April 13, 2016, 14-year-old Kim Edwards and her boyfriend Lucas Markham brutally murdered Kim's mother Elizabeth and Kim's 13-year-old sister Katie. The couple were known as the Twilight Killers due to their obsession with the franchise. NBA Hall of Famer Pistol Pete Maravich, in a 1974 interview with the Beaver County Times, said, "I don't want to play 10 years in the NBA and die of a heart attack at age 40. He played pro ball for 10 years, from 1970 to 1980, and died from a heart attack in 1988 at age 40. In June 2023, a woman fatally shot her Uber driver in El Paso, Texas. Police say she wrongly thought she was being kidnapped. She saw traffic signs reading Juarez, Mexico, and executed the driver. Between 2015 and 2016, unusually high infant mortality rates occurred at the neonatal intensive care unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital in Chester, England. A series of investigations was initiated to ascertain the reasons for the sharp rise in mortalities. After a lengthy set of investigations, Lucy Letby, a nurse originally from Hereford working at the hospital at the time, was arrested in 2018 on suspicion of 8 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. She was released on bail pending further inquiries. Letby was arrested a second time in 2019 on suspicion of 8 murders and 9 attempted murders. Again, she was bailed pending further inquiries. Letby's final arrest came in November 2020, following which she was charged with 8 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder. Letby's trial began in October 2022 and considered with 7 counts of murder and 15 counts of attempted murder. Candace Hiltz, a 17-year-old genius, was brutally murdered in her home in 2006. The case remains unsolved, but there's a shocking twist. A detective was allegedly involved in a heated argument with Candace just days before her death. Evidence from the case were reportedly found in a storage unit that was previously rented by Sheriff Lieutenant Detective Robert Dodd. Could he be responsible? Built in 1885, this eerie jail in Council Bluffs, Iowa, is known for its unique and terrifying design. With its rotating cells, prisoners were trapped like squirrels in a cage. Many believe the jail is haunted by the spirits of former inmates. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps, whispers, and even seeing ghostly apparitions. Feeling brave, you can take a guided tour and experience the chilling atmosphere for yourself. But beware, you might not be alone. In the fall of 1994, pre-med student Kimberly Nilsson was about to start her final semester at ASU. On August 21st, friends reported she was acting very strangely before she went missing. Her skeleton was discovered in the Arizona desert 8 months later. The location where her body was found was just 2 miles away from where investigators discovered her car shortly after she was reported missing. The medical examiner could not find a cause of death, labeling it as suspicious. Nearly 30 years later, the disappearance and suspicious death of Kimberly Nilsson remains a mystery. Today, we're uncovering the chilling acts of Joseph Edward Duncan. Duncan's reign of terror began in 2005 when he kidnapped and brutally murdered a family in Idaho. His sinister acts didn't stop there. Duncan was later linked to multiple unsolved murders across the United States. The extent of his crimes remains a mystery to this day. On August 30th, 2015, Jolie Callan and her ex-boyfriend Lauren Bunner went hiking in the Pinhoti Trail in Chiaja State Park in Alabama. During the hike, Bunner unexpectedly shot Callan in the head and pushed her off a 40-foot cliff. This is the last photo of Callan, taken by Bunner just moments before he killed her. Get ready for some chilling facts about the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Did you know? Michael Jackson's famous moonwalk was inspired by the mime Marcel Marceau's walking against the wind routine. Creepy fact: Michael Jackson once purchased the bones of the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick, for a whopping $1 million. Prepare to be spooked by these morbid facts about Michael Jackson's life. Neverland Ranch had a secret room behind a closet, only accessible by Michael's bedroom. Michael Jackson's doctor, Conrad Murray, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter for administering a lethal dose of propofol. After a bombing mission to Regensburg, Germany, in 1943, the man operating the ball turret gun of this B-17 flying fortress was crushed to death when his plane was forced to the ground without landing gear. This is a surveillance video image of William Dave Sanders guiding more than 100 students out of the cafeteria during Columbine High School massacre. He was later shot twice in the chest, and unfortunately, he didn't survive. This photo shows 6 nails embedded in the skull of a construction worker, Isidro Mejia. after an industrial incident caused a nail gun to shoot nails into his head and brain on April 19, 2004. This X-ray image is from the Providence Holy Cross Hospital in Los Angeles. 5 of the 6 nails were removed in surgery that day, and the 6th was removed from his face on April 23rd, after the swelling went down. This is an image of 21-year-old Nicole Carol Miller, boarding Flight 93 on September 11, 2001. She would be dead just a few hours later. This is Japanese adult star and ultra-nationalist Mitsuyasu Maeno, posing next to his plane before flying off to kamikaze his aircraft into the home of right-wing politician Yoshio Kodama on the 23rd of March 1976. Fortunately, Kodama survived uninjured. This is a mugshot of Bertha Baranda, the woman who was arrested for removing her husband's genitals with a razor in 1907. This is one of the last photos of Claire Wineland before she went into surgery for a double lung transplant. The surgery was successful, but shortly after she suffered a massive stroke and would never recover. She tragically passed away 1 week after her transplant. This is the last known photo of Sophie Sergey, a 20-year-old University of Alaska at Fairbanks student who was murdered in 1993. This photo was taken hours before her death. Her murder remained unsolved up until 2019, when DNA evidence linked Stephen Downs of Auburn, Maine, to the crime. He was arrested and sentenced to 75 years in prison. In 1949, Charles H. Cohen, then aged 12, hid in a closet as mass murderer Howard Unruh shot his family to death. He was the sole survivor of his family. Almost 70 years later, his granddaughter, Carly Novell, would survive the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting by hiding in a closet. In 1976, 16-year-old James Byron Hawkinson ran away from his home. After weeks of no word, a missing persons report was filed, but nothing came of it. In 2017, a nephew made a connection and submitted his DNA to Chicago PD. It was found that James was victim number 24 of serial killer John Wayne Gacy. In 2010, Julien Barrault was so infuriated about losing a knife fight in the popular game Counter-Strike that he spent 6 months tracking down his opponent and stabbed him in real life. In 2001, Kenny Waters, a man wrongfully imprisoned for 18 years for a murder, was finally released after his high school dropout sister went to law school so that she could prove his innocence. In 1950, Timothy John Evans was wrongfully executed for the murder of his 19-year-old wife and 13-month-old daughter in London. His last words were, "Christie did it." 3 years later, the serial killer John Christie confessed to killing 8 women, including Timothy's wife. The case played a major role in the abolition of capital punishment in the United Kingdom for murder in 1965. On May 7, 2019, a school shooting occurred at STEM School Highlands Ranch. 1 student was killed and 8 others were injured. The student that tragically lost his life was Kendrick Castillo. He died when he lunged at the shooter, giving other students enough time to hide. This photograph shows a framed picture of Kendrick that his classmates placed so he could still graduate with them. His best friend accepted his diploma on his behalf. Frank Hayes was a jockey who suffered a fatal heart attack and died in the middle of a race in 1923. His body, however, remained on the saddle throughout the race, as his horse called Sweet Kiss crossed the finish line ahead of the rest, thus winning the race. This was the first time that Hayes had won a race. This is the last image of flight attendant Kristina Raspopova. Unfortunately, she was killed in the crash of Yevgeny Prigozhin's private jet on August 23, 2023. In 2015, a woman named Glenna Durham shot and killed her husband before attempting suicide. Soon after, the couple's pet, African gray parrot, the only witness to the crime, started repeating the words, "Don't effing shoot." It is thought to have been the pair's last exchange. Durham survived and was found guilty of first-degree murder. In 2015, a Florida woman named Cheryl Treadway was held hostage by her boyfriend, but she convinced him to let her order a pizza using the Pizza Hut app. In the space for special request, she wrote, "Please help, get 911 to me, 911 hostage help." Police arrived at the location and she was released. After 2 prior efforts that resulted in the juries being unable to reach a unanimous verdict, a trial of the son of former NFL player Antonio Armstrong resulted in a conviction of his son. Armstrong and his wife Dawn were shot and killed in their home in 2016. This is the last text message exchange between Marine Squire Skip Wells and his girlfriend before a gunman killed him and 4 others in Chattanooga in 2015. Balbir Singh Sodhi was a Sikh man who lived in Mesa, Arizona. He was murdered 4 days after September 11th, 2001, after he was mistaken for being Muslim by a Boeing mechanic who wanted to retaliate for the World Trade Center attacks. He is listed on the Arizona State 9/11 Memorial as a victim of 9/11. This is a permanent shadow of a man at the exact moment the atomic bomb Little Boy went off over Hiroshima in 1945. In 2006, David Sharp attempted to climb Mount Everest alone. He successfully reached the summit, but he didn't bring enough oxygen bottles or an emergency radio. He died as a result. This is the 1970s lineup photo of serial killer Ted Bundy. Bundy is the second from the right. In 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentish was on a training flight near Melbourne when he alerted air traffic controllers that he was being followed by a UFO. Asked to identify the aircraft, Valentish radioed his last words, "It isn't an aircraft." His transmission was then interrupted by unidentified noise described as being metallic scraping sounds before all contact was lost. Valentish and his plane were never found.